wait a second. This is a Khalsa camp. I expect a bit more energy in your voices. Let's try this again. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Awesome. My name is Palbinder Kaur, and what I'm going to talk about today, Virji very eloquently talked about becoming a Khalsa. But I want to talk to all of you here about being a Khalsa, walking the talk. Because I think that when we look back and reflect on the vision of a Sikh that Guru Gobind Singh had, but which originated with Guru Nanak, that vision was of a spiritually conscious, socially responsible, and socially active human being. And I just want you to dwell on that for a moment. Because spiritual consciousness is not simply about prayer, meditation, which are critical elements, critical foundations for any human being. But spiritual consciousness was designed as a concept by Guru Nanak to evolve the individual into someone who was socially responsible and then socially active. When we visualize Guru Nanak, we have been sold, in my view, Soba Singh's vision of a guru. An overweight man who is passively sitting with his eyes closed. Maaf karna. I know that in many of your friends' homes, or perhaps your own homes, you may have paintings and pictures of the gurus. But those aren't paintings and pictures of the gurus. Those are an artist's interpretation of what a Sikh is. But today, I'm going to talk about the guru's interpretation of what a Sikh is. Because if we're talking about being a Khalsa, and I'm not isolating that word, by the way, to an Amritdhari Sikh, because not all of us in this room may be Amritdhari. Some of us may not be Gesatari. But the vision was designed to be an active vision, not a static one. And the concepts of Sikhi were not designed to be static concepts of, all right, I've done my Nitnem in the morning, I don't eat meat, including eggs, I don't cut my hair, I don't drink, I'm committed and devoted to my one relationship with my partner, my husband or my wife. That's just the beginning foundation of guidelines and rules that set the parameters for human conduct, for your own self. But we have to fill that self with something else. And filling that self with something else is what the spiritually conscious, socially responsible, and socially active human being does. So what does it mean to be spiritually conscious? Guru Nanak had it very simply and eloquently summarized when he came out of that river that day after his spiritual realization. Very simple. There's no Hindu, there's no Muslim. The concept of one unifying spiritual energy that cuts and permeates through every single body, every single thing that makes us think that we're individuals and we're separate from the world. The Guru was trying to break out that mental image. You know, we talk about ego, right? We talk about ego as a concept. Well, what does the ego want? The ego wants to be different. The ego wants to be separate. The ego thinks, I am other than you. And every single time something happens to try to break that ego down. We become humiliated perhaps, or someone makes fun of us, or we didn't get first place, or maybe we got last place. Every single time something happens that hurts our ego quickly tries to remedy itself. It quickly tries to build itself back up. Because the ego doesn't want to be crushed. It doesn't want to be made into this non-existent entity. But what would happen if the ego disappeared? The Gurus told us. If the ego disappeared, we would actually realize that I and you are the same. That I and that beautiful tree and the hills behind me are the same. But somehow, we don't want that. Somehow, we feel the urge, the need, the desire to be different, to be separate. But spiritual consciousness is about saying, I am not separate. Because when I start realizing that I'm not separate, then what happens? Something really magical, really incredible happens. Then, if I bleed, it hurts. But when you bleed, it hurts the same. When my arm breaks, it hurts. When my heart breaks, it hurts. But when your heart breaks and your arm breaks, it hurts the same. That's what spiritual consciousness is about. That's what Nam Simran is about. It's about the bot, the job, recognizing and being aware of the amazing, immense, vast beauty of creation. From the smallest atoms and particles to the infinite galaxies. It's about that. But Simran is going beyond the bot, going beyond the recognition of the awesomeness of God's creation, to the awesomeness of our inner selves, of who we are, of recognizing our inner selves. Man, tu jyot swarup hai, apna mool pashan. Mind, you are the embodiment of light. Recognize your true worth. That's what the Simran that Virji is talking about is about. So external, recognizing the beauty of all of creation. That's all my banis. That's Japji Sab, that's Jap Sab, that's Anand Sab. And then internalizing that with the Simran. That's the foundation of spiritual consciousness, because when we begin to realize that these barriers between us aren't really barriers at all, that we're just incredibly beautiful representations of very unique physical forms. But of course, every form has to come to an end. Our houses, our jobs, our careers, our education, our parents, our friends, our families. And so sometimes it's an exercise I use with my kids. I have 3 kids, 8-year-old twins and a 12-year-old daughter. And so sometimes I use this exercise with them. I say, okay, ask yourself the question, who am I? And very quickly, at the very beginning, the answer that will jump to most of our minds is, I am Palbinder, I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I'm a wife, or I'm a brother, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm an uncle. And then very quickly from that, I moves this feeling inside that isn't quite right. Okay, I am a spiritual being, maybe. No, that doesn't sound right either. Okay, I'm a human. And so what we do is we consistently go through the checklist, and as I'm sitting here speaking to you, run through your mental checklist. And very quickly, that checklist will seem like it's done, but not quite. Because every single way of interpreting who I am seems to come down to an expression of what I do. Right? So if who I am is a mother, all I'm saying is I have children and I take care of them. Sometimes well, sometimes not. Every single one of those things. So now what we have to do is to strip that away and go down to, okay, let's pretend I lose it all. I lose my job, I lose my house, I lose my kids. Now I'm still a human being. I still have a body. Okay, well, let's pretend I lose my arms. I lose my legs. Because I'm no longer a mother, I'm no longer an aunt, I'm no longer all those things. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. So now I'm going to get rid of those things, those physical parts of my structure that kind of make me feel like they're my identity. Right? So cut away my legs, cut away my arms. Don't cut off my head because I'm going to stop thinking. But wait a second. Cut off my head. I'm going to stop thinking, but am I going to stop being? I know it's kind of heavy stuff. The first thing in the day before noon, I get it, guys. Let's try it, though, because I know you guys have good, strong brains. Chop off my head. Am I going to stop being? What do you guys think? I see some heads shaking, saying no. The I, that's a human, is going to stop being. But the Jyot, that's a being, is going to keep on. Right? So there's got to be something a little bit more than just the physical structure that we all, and particularly our incredible egos, identify with. There's got to be more. So what's the more? What's the more? That's what the gurus were trying to help us figure out. What's the more? So, we know that there's more than just the body, because if the body disappears, it's gone. And scientists will tell you energy cannot be created and destroyed. It only changes in shape and form. So we also know that there's some energy in us that kind of keeps us alive. Because we know that if the body's still here, people can be dead, right? So there's something more. The focus of meditation is the something more. The focus of the Khalsa is to then take a step forward and say, all right, I'm kind of getting this. I'm getting that I'm spiritual being that is beyond just my body, my physical form, the physical things I identify with. But now what? Because, forgive me, but I don't believe that Guru Gobind Singh's vision of a Khalsa was a group of people who spent most of their time meditating and praying and keeping to themselves or their very small community of friends. I don't think that at all. When we think about what we know to be Guru Nanak, Guru Nanak went on missions, adasis, not as a missionary to convert, but as someone who went on these incredible trips to learn, to connect. Sab jag fir ke dekhya. Sahib ek Khudada. I've wandered the world and I've seen one thing, that there is only one God. So there's only one unifying force with all of us. So over and over and over again, Guru Nanak did that. But is that all Guru Nanak did? Mm-mm. Because a spiritually conscious individual understands that they must be socially responsible. And so Guru Nanak then carried that to the second step. When we think of the pillars of Sikhi and of our Guru's message, we very proudly say, Guru Nanak believed and taught us that there's one God, that there's universality of religion, that men and women are equal. But maaf karna. Meri samjh de vich, jo aj sanu nazar aa raha hai gaya, apne pindan de vich, apne gharan de vich, apne shahran de vich, apne deshan de vich. That was exactly the same reality that Guru Nanak lived in and actually tried to have an effect on. We very proudly say as Sikhs that Guru Nanak stood up against female infanticide. But we pick up newspapers in our community every day where there are advertisements by agencies that do fetal testing, gender testing. You just need to drive through Punjab to see almost at every single major intersection and hospital the number of medical facilities that very brashly advertise their ability to do genetic testing just to see what the gender of the baby will be before it's born so it can be aborted. Really simple, guys. We haven't really, as a community, understood at all that walking the talk meant that our job was to stand up and say, no, we're not going to stand for that. That was supposed to be the Khalsa. We very proudly say that we live in a community where women are respected, where people of all faiths, economic status, social status, race, are respected. And absolutely the institutions that the Gurus built very clearly were built on those foundations. There's no doubt about that. But every time you see an ad in a newspaper advertising for a Jat Sikh male to marry a Jat Sikh female, every time you see that, you're looking our reality straight in the face. And it's the same reality that Guru Nanak was trying to help us change. So if we look at the evolution of Sikhi over the 200 years, and it's an evolution, but not quite, because all of the subsequent Gurus after Guru Nanak were always true to the original message. It was really an evolution, really more of trying to formulate into structures, physical structures, gurdwaras and other places, trying to show how we could walk the talk. So that if we said that we were all equal, then let's create institutions, buildings, gurdwaras, places of worship, where every day when we walk in, we see the four doors. And we see that that means that people from every corner of the earth are allowed to come in. do we then go and see Ramgarhia Gurdwaras? Why then are we looking at, Gurdwaras from this caste or that caste? In every bend, you'll have 3 or 4. And in every bend, you'll have all 3 or 4 blaring, competing in the morning for Nitnem with their separate and distinct loudspeakers to see who can out-yell the other. But that's not what the 4 doors were supposed to be designed for. We create langar in the Gurdwaras, we make it in the spirit of the Gurus, we say. But the langar was not designed to feed the well-fed. Let's think about that. All of us, I would say most of us here, and most of our community, particularly in Canada, pretty well off. We can afford our 3 square meals a day. But we go to the Gurdwara, we don't question why this incredible array of foods is spread before us. We eat it, but we don't think about what was the point of langar. Now, if we build Gurdwaras, shouldn't they be built in the downtown east side of Vancouver? Isn't that where we need a Gurdwara? Shouldn't they be built in Wally? What are we doing? And I ask this question not to say that I have the answers. I ask this question because I think that until we start asking ourselves, until we start questioning ourselves over and over and over again, we're not going to see change. Now, I'm not talking about change as the cause. I'm talking about change as the effect. Does anybody know what I mean by that? Yes.
It's kind of like the fact that a Sikh's purpose isn't to cause the change, but a Sikh is just whatever a Sikh touches changes because it's so different. The spirit is just so different from what exists otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got it bang on. Guru Nanak didn't start off with a mission, I will change the world. I will live the life of a Khalsa. I will simply live the life of a spiritually conscious being. And the world will automatically change if it needs to. If we look at change as the effect rather than the cause, then what that does for us is it actually strips away all the ego part of why many of us do seva. Because we like to think that seva is about selfless giving. But let's look at how we do it again, only inside ourselves, because I don't think it's right, and I don't think that the gurus did this. Because when I read Gurbani, I don't see the gurus saying, you are wrong, you can't do this. The gurus were saying, always inner focus. Man, man, man. Oh, my mind. It was about self-change. It wasn't about outward. It was about inward reflection. Okay? So let's look at seva. Seva, very simple English spelling. S-E-V-A. Let's use that one. Okay? Seva. S. Serve. Serve. Service. E. Everyone. Everyone. That means no caste, no color, no gender, no religious, no cultural, social boundaries or distinctions. Everyone. V. Voluntarily. It's not quite seva if I was told by my dad to do it. It's not quite seva if I'm reluctantly going to help somebody out. And I'm sitting there the whole time thinking, oh man, I gotta be late. Why do I have to do this? Why did they tell me that it was my job? That's not seva at all. And the A, this is the most important one because this is the one I think where we get stuck at. I think we all get to serve everyone voluntarily. But the A for me means anonymously. Okay, anonymously. What do you think I mean by that? Remember that ego I was talking about? Well, this is the ego. Ego is, I did it. It's me. Hey, look here, guys. I am the one. I did it. I'm the one that helped you. I'm the one that gave you that money so you could buy your groceries. I'm the one that built that house or that educational facility for you. That's what the ego says. But Seva says it needed to be done. And it was done. But that hurts the ego, right? Because the ego wants to be different. The ego wants to be noticed. The ego wants to stand apart. So it's really hard, that anonymous bit. But the anonymous bit is the bit that says, if there's going to be ardas in the Gurdwara for a donation, all the people that donated, I'm not going to have my name read out. That's what the anonymous seva says. But then the ego says, who will know? How will they know that I donated the money? Because they should know, otherwise they'll think badly of me. That's the ego. And the minute you think that, what you just did wasn't seva anymore. You cancel the seva out. So keeping those 3 or 4 ideas in mind, right? I'm going to try a little exercise. So I'm going to ask you guys to stand up when what I say has a ring of truth or strikes you as something that you've experienced or felt, okay? Let's try this. Anyone who has ever read, in the last month only, I'm going to focus your attention to, okay? In the last month, anyone who has read a newspaper story about the Sikhs and felt really upset because of the way the media portrayed us, I want you to stand up. Anyone. Don't be shy, because Khalsas are not shy, and this is a Khalsa camp, so you stand up. In the last month, if you read a newspaper story about the Sikhs and you were upset about how we were portrayed in the media.
I'm standing for other reasons.
Yeah, stay standing though. Okay, stretch those legs of yours, strengthen those muscles, stay standing. All right. Anyone who in the last month was present when they felt that someone that they know, their friend, their relative, sister, brother, whatever, was being mistreated, either verbally or physically, stand up. Okay, and remember, you're going to stand up and stay standing. You're not allowed to sit down. Okay? It's really important. All you new fellows that just joined me, same thing. So I'm asking a bunch of questions. Sit down for now, then you guys. And then as soon as you feel like it strikes a chord for you, I want you to stand up. It's really important. Okay. So the first question was, anyone that read a newspaper story about the Sikhs in the last month that they felt really upset them, they stand up. So we've got some people standing. Now, anyone that in the last month saw someone that they know, a friend, a colleague, a relative, saw or heard them being mistreated physically or verbally, stand up. So we got some people standing. Good. Anyone in the last month that heard about some kind of an injustice, okay? Something just upsetting that they felt, again, affected more their own community, but an injustice, stand up. Now, someone who might have had difficulty or a challenge getting into a facility because of their kakars, their religious beliefs, in the last month, stand up. Okay. Anyone who in the last month heard someone being racist, but again, isolated to the Sikhs, around the Sikh community, saying something really offensive about the Sikhs or doing something offensive that affected their image of Sikhs, you stand up. So I got almost everybody standing up. There's a couple of people. Might be too shy, but I'm thinking that we're all standing. Now, I want you guys to take it one step further. Now stay standing, don't sit down. Anyone in the last month that wrote a letter to the editor complaining about a newspaper story that they didn't like about the Sikhs, I want you to step forward right here, next to me. Any letters to the editor in the last month? Okay. Anyone in the last month, when they heard their friend or their relative being mistreated physically or psychologically, verbally, I want them, and they actually did something. They interjected, they tried to stop it, or they spoke up against it. I want you to come forward. No, you need to come forward. Need to come forward. Don't be shy. I'm standing here in front of all you. Come on. Okay. Anyone who saw when they heard anything offensive about the Sikhs or had a difficulty or a challenge about their gagas or something to do with their identity, and they actually did something, filed a human rights complaint, or they actually did more than complain to each other, but they actually tried to organize around that, do something very specific about that in the last month, you can also come forward. Okay. Now I know Gurdit Singh, I know you've been doing a couple of things, so I want you to come forward, because I know that. Now I want you guys, for a few minutes, to just have a look at this group, okay? Look at yourselves, all the ones that are standing. And I'm going to say all of you are universally standing, with the exception of my 3 kids who are really shy and they're sitting in the back. And now let's look at the small percentage of people that we have here. Okay? Roughly speaking, about 9, 10 people in the front. Roughly speaking, about 30 people in the bench. Now, I'm going to try something different. I want you guys to now, all of you guys, sit down, but this group is going to stay standing. Sit down for a second. There we go. Now, shift it away from the 6, okay? Anyone in the last month in this group, when they wrote letters to the editor or spoke up about an injustice that they felt they saw or heard, if you spoke up about an injustice related to someone other than people in the Sikh community, women, white women, perhaps, black people, Aboriginal people, gays, whatever community. Anybody that did anything, whether it was letters to the editor, whether it was supporting them in a human rights complaint, whether it was perhaps speaking up and intervening or interjecting if we thought that they were being mistreated. Anybody in this group? Step forward right here. Think on that for a minute. Serve everyone voluntarily, anonymously. I took your anonymity away on these things. Okay, I want you guys to sit down. Thank you, you've been great. What do you think I was trying to do there? Any thoughts?
We stay within our own people to tap out and we don't go beyond our perhaps that's where we're most involved there, so it's more likely to help people within our own circle.
Yeah. So the answer here was that how isolated and insular and inward thinking and inward acting we have become as a community. When we were designed to be outward thinking and outward acting. How many people here have attended public schools in Surrey or across Canada? And how many of you have attended those schools with your gagars, with your gurban, for example? Good, okay, quite a few. How many of you have here have ever gone to, let's see, play karate or any other physical sports where you've kept your gagars intact? You've been able to wear your kara or your gurban or any of those in sports activities? Okay. How many of you ride motorcycles? No, you're too young yet? Okay, there we go, we got one. No helmet needed, right? Okay. How many of you attend educational facilities, colleges and universities, where you're able to walk around with your dastas or with your ramals? Okay. Have jobs where you don't have to wear hard hats? Okay. Can keep your beards even though you're working at McDonald's or Tim Hortons? Yeah? I know McDonald's might not be kosher for everybody here. All right. I asked that question because when I became involved in the Sikh community in terms of doing volunteer work, I was captivated by a group of people that I felt were really different. Really different. Because when they took action, it was almost always outward. It wasn't for their own identities, oftentimes. When they took action, it was always voluntary. And it was virtually almost always anonymous. And that's pretty interesting because when I look around, oftentimes, particularly our organizations, try really hard to jump up and down and say, I'm here, I did it, I did it, I did it. But I was captivated by these people, this handful of people. Now, all those people that raised their hands in all those different activities, how many people do you think, or do you think anyone was involved in terms of being able to affect those rights for you? So that you could actually freely, literally walk down the street with your gurban, which, by the way, was not a given right. In the States, you're still not allowed to do that. It's called carrying a concealed weapon.
Actually, the Ninth District Court of Appeals ruled a long time ago that you can wear it as long as it's on top.
Yeah, but underneath your clothing, you can't. And even on top, in some jurisdictions right now, yeah.
Actually, in the States, I think if it's that phase 2, as long as you actually have to wear outside.
Yeah.
So it's legal to wear outside.
Outside your clothing,
Yeah.
yes. But I'm talking,
Outside you have to wear a small.
oh, it's small. And there's restrictions on that. Anybody hear about those restrictions in Canada, inside or outside? No. Anybody hear those restrictions in terms of your gurbans when you walk into just general public buildings? Or your gagars? So what motivated and captivated me, we've all heard about the heroes. We've all heard about Gurvaj Singh Multani, right? Young guy, 12 years old, wearing his gurban, Montreal school, falls out on the playground. Has everybody heard of him? Who has heard of him? Let's try that. Gurvaj Singh Multani. I got maybe about 8 people. I was making a huge assumption. Huge assumption. Imagine that. First case before the Supreme Court of Canada, unanimous decision of our judges upholding the right to wear your gurban in a public school. And only a handful of people in this group have heard of the young man who was at the center of that. who had the courage to step forward. Remember that group here that we just had a handful that stepped forward? And I'm sure many of you have stepped forward at many other times in your life. And I wasn't trying to isolate that, except I was trying to isolate the last month, because service has to be continuous and ongoing and daily. It's not just sporadic one-off events, because that won't do much. It will do something, but it isn't as effective. So this young man, very courageous, I guess I need to tell you guys a story. I thought I didn't. I think I have time though still, guys. So this young man, 12 years old, Montreal, going to a school. Garbhan falls out on the playground, and some of the children see it, some of the school officials in the yard see it, and they get very upset. And they raise that, and the school board says that, no way, sorry, young Gurbaj Singh, you're not allowed to wear your Garbhan to school. So Gurbaj Singh says, well, that's not right. And his parents say, that's not right. So he has two choices. He can remove his Garbhan, or he can change schools and forget about it, walk away. How many times have we faced a problem and decided we just didn't have the energy or the desire to fight for it and walked away? How many times have we done that? I do that all the time. I pick and choose my battles. And I bet you most of us have picked and chosen that specific kind of battle and walked away. But thankfully, Gurbaj Singh didn't. So what they did was they said, no, this isn't right. We're going to do something about it. So they challenged the school board. That didn't work. They went to the lower court. That didn't work. Went to the Court of Appeal. And Gurbaj Singh's lawyer, Julius Gray, called me. And he said, Palbinder, you know, we've got this case going to the Quebec Court of Appeal, and we got a real concern here because it's a young boy and his religious identity and his 5Ks. And we need you there. We need your organization, the World Sikh Organization, to go and assist in this, because it doesn't look good. It looks really bad, actually. Right now, the media, publicity, everything is against us. And so we made the decision to help him. And helping him meant that participating as interveners, which is a legal distinction, but it's really an important distinction, because in our courts in Canada and in other jurisdictions around the world, sometimes groups are allowed to participate in a case going before the courts where the case is of importance and significance to more than just the individuals involved. There's some broader social policy issues that are involved, broader issues at stake. And so the case went to the Court of Appeal of Quebec. I argued it there. And the interesting thing, and this is where I say that we need to be aware of what's going on. You know the team of people that helped put even that stage together? None of them were paid. None of them. All of them were working full-time, had jobs. They weren't lawyers except for me and my one colleague, who I'll talk about in a minute. Some of them weren't even Kesatari. Not even Kesatari. One of them was Gora. Right? These people volunteering their own time, which means their own resources, by the way, because they're taking time away from their jobs, taking time away from their full-time jobs and their children and their families. Many of them have children and families. All of them have already gone through the public school systems. So really, and their kids, for some of them, have already gone through the public school systems. So really, there was no real, tangible, personal motivation for them to do this. And by the way, neither was there for Gurbaj Singh, because Gurbaj Singh's family decided they were going to continue the battle, but he was going to shift schools so that his education wouldn't be stalled. So even Gurbaj Singh, by that point, up to the Court of Appeal level, wasn't doing it for himself anymore.
Because Gurbaj Singh himself would have finished. Death threats to this young man and his family. Imagine that. Immigrant family, not much money, not much resources. Because even though my work was all free, but Julius Gray still needed to be paid. So his family needed to raise funds. And the local community in Montreal worked really hard to do that. All of these people, these handful of people, working their butts off for you guys. And the sadness is that most of you don't even know it. So the case went to the Supreme Court of Canada because we lost at the Court of Appeal. And the Supreme Court of Canada, it was astounding. Julius and I sat there, we were waiting for the judgment, and they put you in a little room, and they release it first to the lawyers, and then they release it to the rest of society, the public. And we sat in this room, and the judgment gets handed, and it's upside down. We're not allowed to even lift it and look at it until everybody's got their copy sitting in front of them. That's because every decision from the Supreme Court is so critical, of such national importance. And I sat there and I thought in my mind, because the one thing my parents taught me when I was a kid was that a Sikh never asks Waheguru for anything. That's what they taught me. That when they ask, you simply say, Waheguru, let me accept whatever your will is. That's all. Because they taught me that everything happens for a reason. If we have a challenge, it's because we need that experience to help us grow. So I always think of them as challenges, not as hurdles or barriers, but challenges. So when they said, okay, you can turn it over, I looked at it and I thought, okay, well, culmination of many years, because Gurbaj Singh did not happen in isolation. So before I turned that over, 15 years of legal work flashed before my mind. And that wasn't my legal work alone, by the way, because there were many people, the unspoken heroes, the ones that really did the work, were the ones that you don't even know. The Swaranjits and the Ajits and the Girandeeps, who would bring their small issues to me on a regular basis, little issues. You know, going to Spratshaw College, not being able to wear a kirpan, going to a different facility, not being able to wear their kirpan or keep their hair, Tim Hortons having to cut their hair. All these people, 15 years culminations flashed. And I thought, you know, whatever Waheguru wills. Because the Sikh community up to that point had seen a lot of hits. We had a lot of hits. This was the 90s, late 90s. A lot of hits, 2005, 2004. So when this decision came out, in 2003 or 4 or 5, around that time, I'm getting old. When this decision came out, that all the hits that our community had gone through, the public media, the negative publicity about the Sikh image, our vision of a Sikh and the Gora vision of a Sikh are two very different things. And so when I turned that judgment over and started reading it, it was one of those moments where you sit back and you go, wow. Just wow. 8 judges unanimously said some of the most beautiful things about faith and about spirituality and spiritual consciousness and beliefs. And I'm guessing that most of us have never read the decision. The ones that did read it, a few handful of people, some of them read it and just came back with, yeah, but he has to have restrictions. He's wearing his kirpan. It's got to be secured. It's got to be this. And I said, but wait a second, guys. He was willing to agree to those restrictions, and that's his decision, because I can't tell somebody else how they should believe. But more importantly, we'd secure our kirpan every day to make sure it doesn't fall out. That's what the gatra is, and that's what we explained to the judges, that the kirpan itself consists of the 3 parts. The gatara is critical. It's not just this unsheathed blade, it's a blade that's sheathed. It's a gatara that keeps it secure and in place. But what was really important was that even though most of our community doesn't get it, these 9 white judges got it. And we don't even know. We're ignorant to their thoughts, their views on something that affects us so critically. And I'm not saying this to make you feel bad, okay? Because that wasn't the point of the exercise. Point of the exercise is social responsibility means getting out of our little shells, stepping outside of ourselves, and becoming aware of the world. That's what Guru Nanak did. He became aware of the world. A friend of mine, and some of you might have heard me say this, a friend of mine said many, many, many years ago, and some people might find this a little offensive, I don't. I've always felt it. It resonated with me. That if Guru Nanak was alive today, he'd be backpacking across Europe. With his 2 best friends, a Muslim and a Hindu, or whatever new or whatever religion people of other faiths might be. Because it wasn't a vision of a static Solba Singh's old man with his eyes closed. It was a vision of social responsibility leading to social activity, okay? So what I want to leave you guys with is the question of change and barriers to change, because we're all smart. We all know. When I saw these hands being raised, we all know that problems go on around us. Things that are not acceptable. We all know that. We all see it. But the challenge is doing something about it. So what are some barriers to change? And those of you that didn't find yourself stepping forward on this or in your heart, even the ones that did step forward, there may have been many times where you didn't step forward. What are some of the reasons why, even though we see a problem, we don't do anything about it? What are some reasons?
Someone else.
Looking to the other. Thinking that somebody else might do it. Okay, that's one. What else? Not wanting to make that commitment for time, knowing that it's going to take something, whether it's money or time, right? Okay. Worried about society. That's really important. What do you think that means? Worried about society. Sorry, I'm going to ask one of my young sisters. Worried about people's judgment. What will people think? Oh, they're going to think, chop karke baith nahi hunda. Ami rola paaya. Right? And also, that also connects to fear of upsetting the apple cart. Maintaining the status quo is so much easier than trying to affect some change. What are some other reasons? So we got worry. Okay, yeah.
Intimidation?
Okay, in what way? Feeling intimidated, like you can't do it? Yeah. Worried that you might not be good enough, strong enough, rich enough, right? Okay.
Feeling that maybe it's not your place to say something, maybe because the person you want to address is older, an uncle or somebody that you don't feel like it would be okay, like somebody said.
Yeah. Worried about disrespecting or offending, thinking it's not your place, yeah? Don't want to be the only one to step forward. That goes to, I think, fear that maybe you're wrong. That if most people do it a certain way, and again, as earlier, if no one else has stepped forward, maybe no one needs to step forward. Maybe things are okay the way they are. Is that kind of it? So we've got lots of one more? Yeah. Prioritization. Oftentimes, we know something has to be done. We don't want to spend the energy or the time because it's not important enough. I'm sorry to say that actually is true. For most of us, wearing our gagar is important, but it's not important enough to challenge if we have to go to a courthouse and give evidence as a witness. It's not important enough to challenge in other facilities. Believing in gender equality is important, but it's not important enough to step forward when your cousin or your aunt is being abused by her husband. Equality between people of all faiths is important, but it's not important enough to step forward when a young Aboriginal boy's hair is cut, even though his spiritual consciousness, according to his beliefs, teaches him that he should keep his braids. Or when a Muslim girl is not allowed to play soccer wearing her head covered. Or when a young boy, Scottish, wants to wear his kilt to his prom. The interesting thing is, it becomes less and less important the more other the other people become. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's kind of coming full circle, isn't it? Spiritual consciousness. If we stop thinking of them as other, then suddenly it becomes as important as my rights. And that's why when I was asked to speak about standing up for your rights, I said, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about being a Khalsa. Because being a Khalsa isn't standing up for my rights, it's standing up for everyone's rights. It's about standing up. Standing up. And we have such phenomenal role models in our community, and I know we talk about historical role models, but guys, we have today role models every single day in our lives. Our mothers, our sisters, many of them, our brothers, fathers. They're all our family. We've got so many incredible role models. We just need to open our eyes and look and be willing to make it a priority. Because if we do, then we no longer have to worry about negative images of the Sikhs in the media. It's a non-issue. And we see groups of young people doing that. We see groups of people at the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara. We see people across the globe, teams that went to Haiti, Red Cross blood drives. We see that. There are little bands, little snippets, groups of people that are understanding that they have to walk the talk. But if we leave with only one thing today, only one thing, that is, don't worry about what they do. Don't worry about what the other says. Inward focused, outward acting. Right? That's all we need to do. Because if we can do that, so what I want you guys to do now is, last thing, and then I'm good. I want you to just reflect for yourselves. Make a commitment to yourself. So I'm not going to ask for an outward commitment, an inward commitment first. One thing that you have seen in your day-to-day life, all the people that stood up, because everybody stood up, when they said that they saw something they didn't like. One thing in your day-to-day life that you have seen, that you know fundamentally in your core, in your heart, is wrong. Not morally wrong in the sense of that person should not cut their hair, that person should not go to discos and dance. I don't care about what other people do that way. One thing that goes to the core of Guru Nanak's teachings: equality, human rights, the right to food, to clothing, sanitary water. One thing that you see every day, maybe it's that homeless person on the street that you see, that you walk by every single day, but just kind of turn your head so you don't have to be involved. Or maybe it's that sister or that aunt or the masi, the relative that you know is being abused by her husband. Whatever it is, one thing, and it could be small. It could be the laddus that arrive at your doorstep predictably from that family only when they have boys. Maybe that's all it is. It can be something small. One thing that you see every day that you're going to make a commitment to yourself to change. That you're going to do something about it. Speak up. Because speaking up is the very first thing, awareness raising. Change is not about going up with placards and always going and fighting lawsuits and things like that. Change is simply about speaking up, being vocal. There's no Hindu, there's no Muslim. Change is just about changing perspectives. Okay? So make that one commitment to yourself. But remember what commitments are. Gotta look at yourself in the mirror every night. Right? No one else will know if you didn't live up to it, but you will. Just one little thing. And I guarantee you, you make that one commitment, change will be a natural result. But don't do it if it's going to take up too much time. Don't do it if it's going to interfere with your favorite TV show. Or if it's going to stop you from saving money to go on that trip to Hawaii. Or do it. Because you can always go to Hawaii another time. TV shows will always be there. Right? You figure out your motivation, figure out your barrier, and you simply overcome it. Because that's what being a Khalsa is about. Thank you so much, guys, for listening so intently. You've been awesome. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.